I want us to go back to the early days of the church. I want us to see the church in its very earliest days, before there was any bickering or problems ever occurred. I want us to go back to the days before this congregation started. I want us to go back before the Restoration movement started. I want us to go back before the Reformation. I want us to go back before the Dark Ages. I want us to go back to the very beginning and see what the church was really, really like and what it was meant to be like. What were some of the important characteristics of the church? The first characteristic I want to point out is in verse 42. Acts 2, verse 42. And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, in the breaking of bread and in prayers. Peter concluded his gospel sermon in the second chapter of the book of Acts. On the day of Pentecost, 3,000 souls were saved and became the nucleus for that first church. Now, every once in a while I'll come across somebody who says, I don't want to be in a big church. Well, hate to tell you this, but the church is big already. We just may have small congregations. But the first church, when the church started, it started with 3,000 people. So it was big at the very beginning. But let me show you something that you do not see in the English translation here. In the Greek, which is what the New Testament was written in, this is the way this sentence should really be read. And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine, the fellowship, the breaking of bread, and in prayers. Now, why is that important? It's important because when that article, the, is present, it means that they were a one-of-a-kind thing. That's why you have the word the with the first three, but not on prayers, because prayers are not special just one time. Prayers are all the time the same. Now let me go on and I'll show you what I mean. There were four components to their first worship service. First of all was the apostles' doctrine. That means the teaching of the apostles. Remember that Jesus taught them for 3 years, and then he taught them for 40 days after the resurrection. And I think they probably listened during that 40 days after the resurrection. I think they listened a whole lot better than they did during the 3 years before. I have a sister-in-law who used to be an elementary teacher. And one day she was on her classroom, and when she walked back into her classroom, she got hit just under the eye by a paper airplane. And of course, you know what she did? She gave the old, how dangerous paper airplanes are to throw. How many of you ever heard that speech? I think they make teachers memorize that, because we all heard it when we were in school. You can't do it. You might poke out somebody's eye with one of those things, right? Well, she gave them that talk. And while she was giving them that talk, she said her kids were listening better than they ever had before. They were sitting there with their mouths open, just looking at her, staring at her. What she didn't know at the time was that that little paper airplane had poked a hole right there, and she had a drop of blood on her cheek. They listened well when they saw the blood. I had an idea that during the 40 days after the resurrection, they listened very carefully to Jesus. Better than ever before, because think of it, every time he'd go like this, they would see the wounds in his hands. I think they listened much better.